Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Today is the 29th day of July 2021, and the subject of my talk is going to be with the issue of birth certificate. That is, why the issue of your birth certificate. That is, that birth certificates didn't really exist until early last century. Actually started in early 1900s. And the whole history of this country is like a piecemeal type of deal here. It's just a gradual thing that takes place. Something gets passed, and we have this, and then we have a national bank, and then that's right. We need to add to what we call the issue of 1871 when the District of Columbia, and this is also the issue of corporations. It's the invention of persons, not real people, and they have just as much right as you have, you see. So my question simply is very pointed, is just why does the government have to have your birth certificate? Can you answer that question, folks? Why does the government have to have your birth certificate? Why don't you have your own birth certificate? After all, it is your birth, isn't it? What right do they have to have your birth certificate? Do you ever ponder these things? Most people just accept what's happening, and I've done that in my own life. As an older man now, I do believe that we've been lied to since day one. We never were free. We were told we were free, but that was part of the educational system, which is another question we have to ask ourselves simply is why do we have to have government schooling? Oh, because it's free. No, it's not. Never was free, folks. But that's not the point. That has nothing to do with it. It's to teach their own perspective and how good the government is. When in reality, the government's here to steal, raid from you. My talk is also to young people, especially much young people. Those of you who are in your early 20s, you better wake up. You better become aware of what's really going on, because you're the suckers, because you're not going to get anything. I'm part of the baby boomers, and I don't take the Social Security. I don't want it. But what I'm trying to say simply is that you're not going to have anything. And you out there who are fighting and rallying and tearing up everything, you're just proving that you're following your master. As simple as that. So, with the birth certificate started in early 1900s, why does the federal government need that? Well, there's such a thing as what took place is the Wilson administration, who began to levy what we call federal income taxes. Also introduced what we call the Federal Reserve, which has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve. It's just a group of private bankers who came here and invested into the system here and actually manipulate the markets to their advantage. And most of you may know this, but let's go deeper. Let's go to the year of 1933 with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The very first thing that he did when he was in office is declare a bank holiday. And I want to make something else very clear to you folks. Every president of this country, and the word president should tell you another fact, is that the country is not a country. It's a corporation. And so anyone is called a president is a president of a company or a corporation or executive in charge type of thing. And those are red flags for you to understand, you see. So, it would maybe be better to be called the prime minister, but instead the United States chose, and actually Andrew Hamilton wanted us to follow the whole British way of doing everything. House of Commons, House of Lords, all that. That's what he wanted, which they didn't go that route. They claimed they're following such and such. A lot of these guys are educated, Jefferson, Washington, and others. will quote from, Plato and others. We were going after the Roman system. Well, you look at the city of Washington itself. What does it look like? Just look at the buildings. They're Roman, you see. So we go back to the birth certificate, and what I wanted to do is share something with you, a screen. Just bear with me here. First, I want to talk to you about this gentleman here real quick, if I can. This is James Traficant. He is he's passed away. He was a Democratic congressman, and eventually he comes to the knowledge of something, and becomes brave in his sharing. But he was also expelled from the House. He was convicted of 10 felony counts, including taking bribes, filing false tax returns, and racketeering, and forcing the congressional staff to perform chores at his farm in Ohio and houseboat in Washington, D.C. So he was sentenced to prison and released on September 2009. He served a 7-year sentence. Most people, he really had a change of heart, as far as I can tell, in his life. He was very popular. He was a Democrat. Even defeated a gentleman named Lyle Williams, a 3-term Republican incumbent. He was reelected 8 times without serious opposition. So people really liked this guy. So James Traficant, in the last part of his life, he began to do some soul searching. And I think that what he was doing was simply he was beginning to figure out some things. And he began to figure out simply is that something's wrong with the picture here, folks. And again, I asked this question to you. Why does the federal government have to have your birth certificate, your original birth certificate? That is the long one, the one with your mother's name on it. Not some bogus birth certificate that they give to you. It's a copy. It's not the original. You see, there's no signatures on this piece of birth certificate I received on Tuesday. Nothing. Which means simply it's a joke. It has no power behind it again. Your signature is so important, folks. You need to understand that. You need to understand that when you sign things such and such, mortgage or whatever with a bank, you're getting yourself in trouble. It may be better for you to rent a house than actually, quote unquote, sign a long-term mortgage. Now let's look at this part here that James Traficant did share. So we're going to go back. Let's see. Here we go. Takes me a little time here, but I'll get to it. Just maybe I get a second. So this is James Traficant's speech, and I want to read it. But he's also going back in history. I want you to understand these things. There's a phenomenon, I think, as someone was pointing out to on here as I was reading. It seems every 70 years there's some type of bank type of issue that is with the Treasury Department. That is, something comes up, it's a major deal. So this is James Traficant, and this is him. He's speaking here again, and I'm trying to remember the guy here who's the most important person who eventually is eliminated. He spoke out tremendously against this whole idea. So we're going to read this whole article here, this is speech here. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Members of Congress are officially trustees presiding over the greatest organization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. Well, how in the world does the States government get itself in this trouble? I'll tell you why. They gave their power away under Woodrow Wilson. This is the reason why Woodrow Wilson is the worst president of the United States, period. He's the ultimate, what I would call, traitor. And so what happened was simply is he established major things that happened in his administration. One was simply the starting of the federal income tax. You're not supposed to be collecting income tax, folks, according to the Constitution, but apparently that doesn't mean anything to these people. So they bylog that and come along and say, we can do whatever we want to do. And that's what they do. And so what takes place is simply is this. He also does something. He gets us into World War I when he claims that he's not going to get us in World War I. But the biggest deal was simply what took place in December during the winter months and winter, and I can't remember what year. I would think it's 1913. That only a quorum of senators there were there for a few reasons. A quorum is simply just a small group of people ask something, while 90% of them or 99% of them are gone. So this was done in deceit. This was actually done also in the night. These are all clues, folks, clues for you to understand what travesty is taking place. Maybe some of you know this, maybe you don't. But it needs to be put out here for young people to realize how much you've been fooled by your government, especially your government educational system, and how they tell you you're free. Well, if they had to tell you you're free, that means you're not free. That's just basic logic. And so what happened was simply is that Wilson signed over the deal to allow a Federal Reserve system, the banks, you see. So let's go on. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1933, 48. Statute 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress in session on June the 5th, 1933. Joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolve the sovereign authority of the United States, and the official capacity of all United States government offices, officers, and departments, and in further evidence that the United States federal government exists today is name only. Now you got to understand something. Let's go back all to the way to the beginning, and it's been a piecemeal deal. You see, because I pointed out simply is that they don't obey the Constitution. I've also pointed out simply almost 8 out of the 10 presidents were not even born on U.S. soil here, which was completely against the Constitution. So the word Constitution with the word con is in front of it. That would tell you simply it is a con for you, you see. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers, right out in front of you, folks, via the United Nations, correct? That's why the John Birch Society spoke out against the UN immensely, and why they're so involved today, even far more than even the John Birch Society, which was started in the late 50s. The World Bank and the IMF, all United States offices, officers, and departments are now operating within a de facto. Well, de facto means it's not correct. It's not de jure. De facto means simply it's not fact. A name only on the emergency war powers, which was set up by Abraham Lincoln. That was one of his first deals, emergency war powers in administration. Abraham Lincoln's. Don't put these people on pedestals, folks. Just because you got a statue in Washington means pretty much that they were crooks. In fact, all of them are crooks. With the constitutional Republican form of government now dissolved, you see, this is how this is all being taken apart. See, the destruction of the Republican form of government to a democracy now. So this is what, and I've also explained simply in the past that all Greek city-states that were democracies failed because simply as it became mob rule. And when it became mob rule, it destroyed everything. It became what we call Oh, the crowd, as one would say. It means simply is that the 51% can dictate over the 49%, and the 49% have no rights, period. We're at that age now because the young people don't understand what they're doing. They're actually destroying their own country from within. The receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. The new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established social/communist order under a new governor for America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and replacing the office of Secretary of Treasury to that of the governor of the International Monetary Fund. The Treasury of the United States is just a figurehead. Public Law 94-564, page 8, Section HR, House Resolution 13955 reads in part, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. He's just a figurehead. So gold and silver were such a powerful money during this founding of the United States of America. You'll notice that it's actually not in all caps. The United States. Okay? That's also a clue to you about your name is in all caps, meaning capitalization. That the founding fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be money in America. Since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks and a claim check was issued as a money substitute. People traded their coupons as money or currency, but currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Those Federal Reserve notes you have make no such promises and are not money. They're notes. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government, not money. The federal U.S. government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coin. So what these congressmen did was a treasonous act. You voted for this. It's essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper into debt. We, the people, no longer have any money. Most Americans have not been paid in money for a very long time. In fact, in my generation, we haven't. You see, you remember I spoke about the certificates. You had a certificate of silver and a certificate of gold, and that was written on all these dollars. That is 5, 10, 20, whatever it was. You would get $20 worth of silver, $20 worth of gold, whatever it was. Okay? This is why gold and silver exploded in prices, folks, too. But we'll go into this a little later. Now, do you comprehend why you feel broke? Because we're all broke, you see. Now, do you understand why you're bankrupt along with the rest of the country? The Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. The Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed in creating debt through inflation, devaluation of currency. This is what's going on right now, folks. I gave an illustration yesterday, and I'll just tell you real quick. I went to get my hair cut Tuesday. I paid $16. I asked the lady for a discount because in reality, she was going to charge me $18. When in reality, simply only 2.5 months ago, I paid $14 for a haircut, same haircut. So what's going on here? It's not inflation, folks. It is part of inflation, but basically your money is not worth anything. That's what's going on. It's been going on since the 1970s when Mr. Nixon took us off the gold standard. Mr. Nixon did a lot of credible bad things too. Should have got us out of the war in Vietnam too, in many ways. But he also did something else. He allowed the hospital systems here in America, which were all county hospitals, except they were private, either religious hospitals, such as the Catholics, the Presbyterians, and a few others. But all the rest were county hospitals, and they did not go into debt, you see. They served their people of their county. And that all changed when Nixon was in power. because he promised them whatever they want. So they got what they wanted, and we don't have county hospitals anymore. If they are, they may be just simply in county name only. They're there to make money. They're there to, quote unquote, not to make you healthy, but to make you sick. It is the worst thing you can do is to go to a hospital. Look at the Janice Barcelos information. You'll find out. And why don't you have some guts in your life if you're going to have children? If you're going to have children, the best thing to do is have that child at home, not in a hospital, period. Stop being in fear. So let's go back to this as a ramble. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens or their subjects. Same word. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply and movement of FRNs, has everybody fooled. They have access to the unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes, paying only for the printing costs of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, Treasury bills. You'll wonder somehow that if you look around, that very few countries now are buying Treasury bills. The only people who are buying them is actually the Federal Reserve Bank. The promise to pay the debt to the FRB. There is a fundamental difference between paying and discharging a debt. To pay a debt, you must pay with value or substance. That is gold, silver, barter, or a commodity that both parties agree with. With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge the debt. You cannot pay a debt with a debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency. It has no backing and value of substance. No contract in common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration from both parties. Unpayable debt transfer power and control to the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity, or justice because they have so much wealth already. Their lust is for power and control. Since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fates of many nations. The Federal Reserve System is based on a canon law and the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers used a canon law trust as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust. The U.S. Congress has passed a law making it illegal for any legal person, to duplicate a joint stock trust in 1873. So part of this whole idea here is that puts you also the idea of the war between the states was a takeover of what we call a group of people who said, no, we see the rotten egg here. We're not going to be a part of it. All we want to do is simply, we don't want to be a part of your system anymore, the United States. We want to form our own government, you see. But that couldn't be, you see. You see, at that time, the South was far more welled off than it is today. Far more welled off. It had control, and most of what happened was the whole issue of the people who were in the South who had, especially who ran plantations, I'm not going to lie to you about that, is that they had money in northern banks. And when this began, they pulled their money out of these northern banks. And this is why part of the reason there's the fear factor that Lincoln could not allow this to continue on, you see, because the banks would also collapse. The Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870. See, all this happened after the defeat of the South, you see. Although post facto laws are strictly forbidden by the Constitution. Interesting, isn't it? So this is all bogus. But your belief keeps it in vain. You know what I mean? Something you keep it going. If your belief simply is if you stop voting, you would discover simply is you would have more power. The reason why the Soviet Union fell, folks, was because Trump went in. The people eventually realized the system's bogus. It doesn't work. We don't want this anymore. And so what happened is a loss of confidence. It means simply as people begin to withdraw, or what I would call simply is taking their power back and saying, I'm not voting. I don't care if you have just one particular candidate. I'm not participating. And this is how you have to understand marching in the street does nothing except show that you are a slave. Do you understand? It's as clear as a bird here, folks. Clearly, you are begging the government for protection. You're begging them to take place. You're like a little grumbling little slave because you're saying, oh, please protect me, please. Instead of standing up and having authority and saying, I am the authority. You're not. You see, the Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal U.S. government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender. Yeah, that's right. The laws are the laws of not of the land, but the laws of the sea. You see, the sea, S-E-A, and the sea, S-E-E, goes back to the Pope, you see. And the maritime insurance underwriters to the federal United States operating exclusively under admirable maritime law. So we're not under land laws anymore. That's why people think they go into the court system, bring that Constitution there, and those judges looks, you don't bring that stinking thing in here because that's not what's going on here. But most people are holding on to the Constitution, thinking it's the law of the land. It's not the law of the land anymore, folks. It's the law of the sea. We live in the age of Pisces. Pisces is all to do about water, the water world. So the lender or underwriter bears the risks, and the maritime law compelling specific performance in paying the interest or premiums are the same. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothetical, that is, to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it. So what really happened here? They stole what was valuable from the people. If I remember correctly, with President Roosevelt, that is Franklin Roosevelt, there are two issues that go on here. The first one simply is that he declares that anybody has gold and silver, but mainly gold, that you need to return it back to the government because the government's in trouble here. We need to bail it out. Yeah, it didn't go to the government, folks. It went to the private bankers. Do you follow? The second thing is that when the people also had paper money, that is, that was not a debt instrument, but it actually showed on the bottom in blue a certificate, a gold certificate, a silver certificate, and whatever the price of silver or gold was, which usually stayed at a pretty constant price because there was no inflation, nowhere near what it is today. Usually what happened was simply is they redeemed it. You would take it to the bank and they would redeem it. This is why people don't understand it simply is that what runs are about in banking. What people were doing were bringing their gold certificates or silver certificates and saying, I want my gold and silver. The problem is the banks didn't have the gold and silver anymore, and so they had to close. Now, here's the big deal, real big deal. Instead of gold and silver being the collateral, you are the collateral. This all ties back into the birth certificate issue. You see, that's why the U.S. government has your birth certificate, your original birth certificate, because your birth certificate is the collateral for the quote unquote Federal Reserve System, the Federal Reserve Bank. They use that word federal as though it's to do with the federal government. It has nothing to do with federal government. Actually, federal has nothing to do with centralization neither, folks. It's a joint deal. The word federal, I shared this also on my Facebook. It said federal is a deal, what we would call between two people or three people, whatever it is, and agreed upon. It's nothing to do with a government, a form of government. They fooled you again. The better word would be simply is that it's a centralized government we have now. The power comes from Washington. Okay? So let's get here. Prior to 1913, that is before 19, most Americans owned clear allodial title to property. You see that word, allodial? You see it. That's real property, folks. That means you don't pay property tax. They owned it. They owned their property. It was free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. So you see what Wilson did, Woodrow Wilson did? You need to get some really madness, and you need to understand, you need to get mad. You don't need to feel sorry for yourself. You need to get mad about this and see what's going on and how you've been duped. And so Woodrow Wilson, which I've done a video on him, shared that with another lady, Smoking in G Sharp, about a year ago. We talked about it. Most people don't even know this. He's the ultimate traitor to this country. He basically was a son of a preacher man, too. That makes it even worse. So hypertherapy all property within the United States. In other words, they took it all to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees, stockholders held legal title. So this is all adding up because, see, the birth certificate started in the early 1900s. So this is a piecemeal deal as how they put this together. Little by little, they took it away from you. It was like the fox that came into the hen house and stole all your chickens, and actually stole also all the eggs too. So what happens now? The U.S. citizen, subject, that's what he is a tenant. So we've gone back in time, folks. We've gone back to the Middle Ages. You don't own your property. So he's become a franchisee. Sorry, I'm not getting the words because I'm a little upset. I should be upset. You should be too. Was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via his or her birth certificate. See how all this ties in? In 1933, the federal United States, hypothetically, all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their subjects. The 14th Amendment, U.S. citizen to the Federal Reserve System. The 14th Amendment was never lawfully ratified. Neither was the 16th. But the 14th is the critical one. You see, in order for it to be ratified, every period and comma, every capital letter, non-capital letter has to be to the T, and how it's, quote unquote, passed by each House and Senate in the states. And that didn't take place, you see. They didn't get those at all. It's all a lie, you see. And when you come to the point, simply is that you have power still, folks. Your power simply is to not exercise that power in voting. You follow me? That's your power. You better start figuring that out and stop being, I voted today. Look at me. I'm such a great American. You had that little sticker. Did they give you a burger for that too? Did they give you a hamburger? Same thing with this whole crap that's going on today too. But we won't go into that area. In return, the Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the federal U.S. corporation all the credit, that is money substitute, if needed, like any other debtor. The federal United States government had to assign collateral and security to their creditors as a condition of their loan. Since the federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of the economic slaves, the U.S. citizen or subject, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. They also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national parks, you hear that, national parks, forests, birth certificates, and nonprofit organizations as collateral against the federal debt. All has already been transferred as payment to the international bankers. Now do you understand why Jesus himself spoke out about the money lenders, the money changers, how they dubiously fooled them in the temple when they gave them real something else, and they gave back to the money lenders, changers, gave them some token, and they got the real asset. So belief in government, folks, same thing with religion. Unwittingly, America has returned to its pre-American Revolution. That is, we're living under feudalism, feudal roots whereby all land is held by a sovereign and the common people have no rights to hold a allodial title to property. Once again, we, the people, are the tenants and the sharecroppers, renting our own property from a sovereign in the skies of the Federal Reserve Bank. We, the people, have exchanged one master for another. This has been going on for over 80 years without the informed knowledge of the American people. Well, it's time to get this stuff out, folks. You need to tell your neighbors what's going on. Don't care what they think about you. That's not the important part. They just need to know. Because then when you tell them, simply is now they've got to make a decision. Either they believe you or not. But their blood is not on your hands. Get it? Without a voice protesting loud enough, now it's easy to grasp why America is fundamentally bankrupt. Why don't more people own their properties outright? Why are 90% of American mortgages are to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid? Why does it feel like you are working harder and harder and getting less and less? Because you are. And it's even more evident now. This is a time to become aware. This is a time to wake up, folks, and see what's going on. Because it's right before your eyes what they're doing. But now it's even more grievous because now they're coming for you. You see, you're no longer worthy of anything because pretty much they've taken all they want. You're worth more dead now than you are worth alive. Because there are not going to be any jobs here anymore, folks. Don't you see what's going on before your own eyes? Why robots are doing it all? Why there's no jobs hardly here compared to what it was in the past? Why has the population gone up tremendously? You know, there was less than 180 million people living here in this country in 1960, but there are 330 million here. Yet, no one's having kids anymore. So where are these people coming in? They're coming in from foreign countries. They're breaking up the fabric of the country of what others used to believe here and destroying the fabric of all the things, such as why we have two languages spoken here in America, English and Spanish. You just look around, folks. It's all there. Stop living in denial. So we are reaping what has been sown, and the results of our harvest is a painful bankruptcy and a foreclosure on American property, precious liberties, and a way of life. Few of our elected representatives in Washington have dared to tell the truth. Yeah, they're the dirty ones, you see. They don't deserve any respect at all. You do not call these people honorable. They're not honorable at all. So the federal United States is bankrupt. Our children, that's you young people. That is you at 20 years old. Look around you. Look at those jobs. There are no jobs there. Our children will inherit this unpayable debt and the tyranny to enforce paying it. America has become a complete bankrupt in the world leadership, financial credit, and its reputation for courage, vision, and human rights. This is undeclared economic war, bankruptcy, and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. And he just speaks simply as wake up, America. Take back your country. Well, the way you take back your country, again, as I've shared, and I'll make it clear again, is not marching out in the streets and begging them. It don't work that way, folks. It all comes from simply your realization of knowing that simply as you've been lied to, and you've been deceived. And you don't even know it. You don't even know it. And those who know it don't know the whole picture. So this whole thing has been piecemeal. So I'm trying to connect the dots for you to understand how this whole system has begun gradually and continues just like a frog in water. The temperature is just gradually getting warmer and warmer. And those of you who are very young, you need to realize simply is you're going to be in a whole hell of a mess here in the near future because you're not going to own anything. And some recommendations I recommend for you simply is you need to work together as a co-op, either find like-minded people, and you need to have property working together, and you need to grow your own food. This is a sad state and we live in, but it's the only way, basically, as I see it, in dealing with this. And begin to work on these whole things and renege and figure out about your birth certificate. And when I mean birth certificate, meaning simply is getting the mother's name on the birth certificate. You don't want just a piece of paper, you see. You have to have your mom's signature on there because that's how they create money, is from your birth certificate, you see. And so what they did was they exchanged something. This is something I learned only a couple of days ago. They promised you something else. They promised you Social Security. They basically said you're too stupid to save your own money, so we're going to do it for you. And they also said, well, we'll provide now later in the 1960s, and especially in the 70s, we need to offer Medicare. You see, we got to help these people, out, such and such. So they're providing this such and such. So they're kind of in some ways, trying to be nice here, but in reality, is the wool has been pulled over your eyes. And then later on, it's Medicaid, such and such. We'll pay for your drugs. Well, drugs don't heal you, folks. They never have. They may deal with what I call sometimes the pain, for a short period of time. The reason why you have pain in your body is to tell you something's wrong with you. If you listen to your body, you can figure out what's going on. So anyway, I appreciate you listening. I hope that you were gleaning something from this. I don't understand why I share the truth and no one even comments out there. I also share this truth from my heart. This comes from my heart, folks. This is what I do. I care enough about you to stand up here on this platform, or just sit on this platform and share what I know and put the parts together. Some of this I've known for quite a while, you see. So it takes courage to do this. Am I putting myself on a pedestal? No. But I care about people because I see what's coming, especially the young folks, because they're not going to have a leg to stand on, you see. And they've duped you. They've duped you all the way down the road here. So thank you for listening. Appreciate it. I'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. And thank you again. Have a good day.